10 years have passed since Shirley Temple's untimely death. The Globe simply could not quit discussing about. There was more to the tale than we were ever told, according to others, and her family has been silent throughout it all, particularly her kids, because it has only been 10 long, agonizing years since her children, yes, her children, have finally spoken up. By the conclusion of this movie, you will not only know what actually occurred all those years ago, but you will also understand why they decided to speak now and why they waited so long to do so. 10 years ago, what happened? On February 10, 2014, Shirley Temple, the curly-haired powerhouse who won over millions of hearts with her dancing, singing, and tap-tap, passed away. Is it not unbelievable? You know Shirley Temple, even if you didn't watch her as a child, don't you? That grin, those dimples, the way she used to be able to light up a whole movie screen with a simple glance and a small laugh, that's the one indeed. In any case, she passed away quietly in her Woodside, California, home, calmly. Something about that is reassuring, isn't it? It was only a peaceful departure from a noisy, busy existence, nothing sad or spectacular. She was 85. Imagine living for 85 years, spending a large portion of those years in the spotlight, and yet ultimately managing to keep a great deal of her personal life private. Did Shirley Temple truly pass away with a devastating secret, or did her kids simply decide that the truth wasn't ready for the world? They've finally spoken up, though. Let's also imagine that some of the rumors were true. What made them wait 10 years? What do they reveal, exactly? And how does it alter our perception of America's most beloved child star? Hold on tight. By the end, this becomes poignant, startling, and little tragic. Now, Shirley had been having some respiratory problems for a few weeks, according to her longtime agent and family spokesperson, Charles Black Jr., who is also her son. He talks about keeping it in the family. There was nothing unexpected, no emergency situations, and no hurried hospital stays as you occasionally hear about. Although she was sleeping, her doctor stated that respiratory failure was the cause of her death. Calm. That is the sort of conclusion that everyone secretly wishes for, isn't it? To calmly and painlessly pass away in the comfort of your own home, surrounded by the people you love. What's so endearing, you know? Her intellect was as sharp as a razor, even if her body was gradually failing. According to her son, she continued to discuss literature, the news, and the world, until the very end. Don't you think that speaks volumes about the type of lady she was? She wasn't only a kid celebrity who vanished when the limelight went out. No, she continued to be active in her own place and in her own way. She felt alive without the red carpets and bright lamps. Her family released this lovely, respectable statement as soon as the news was announced. She was referred to be America's darling. How could they not, really? Didn't she have that sweetheart? They didn't stop there though. They paid tribute to her whole life, not just the adorable movie parts that brought her fame. They spoke about her amazing diplomatic efforts. Shirley Temple was really a legitimate ambassador, most poignantly, as their great-grandmother, grandmother, and mother. Isn't it funny? Only a small group of individuals could have a deeper understanding of someone who the entire globe has known for decades. And the answer? It was enormous and instantaneous. Hollywood hesitated. Supporters wept. Politicians had their say. She was referred to be a real icon and legend by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Bush, George H.W.S., came next. Yes, the George Bush who claimed she was a good diplomat in addition to being talented. It's wonderful to discover Shirley Temple was more than simply a well-known figure. She enjoyed esteem in a wide range of professions. Does anyone else have the experience of shaking hands at foreign embassies after singing Animal Crackers in My Soup? Nevertheless, she remained loyal to her identity in those final years, even in death, modest, personal, and unconcerned about the performance. Her burial. It was a modest private event at Alta Mesa Memorial Park rather than some grandiose Hollywood production. No dramatic farewells or cameras, just tranquility and close family. She wanted things that way. Just relax, no spotlight, no curtain call. But her admirers, yes, they had no intention of letting her leave without a little glitz. They brought lollipops to her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. There are many of them. A charming little homage to her well-known On the Good Ship lollipop song. That is the sweetest thing, isn't it? The fans seem to be saying, "We remember you and the feelings you gave us as children." And I believe that would have made her smile. Everything the family had previously disclosed was validated when the death certificate was eventually issued in San Mateo County. Natural causes, no mystery or drama, just the peaceful conclusion of a lengthy, significant life. Perhaps the most exquisite aspect of it all is how someone who filled screens with such pleasure and purity was able to disappear in a manner that seemed as delicate and elegant as she had always appeared. Why her kids decided to speak forward now. 10 years have passed since Shirley Temple's death. 10 entire years. In all honesty, it seems like only yesterday that people were grinning at her priceless curls and dimples while seeing her vintage black and white movies. However, 10 years later, her family, particularly her children, are at last sharing what life was like behind all the glamour and celebrity. And it's not what most people believe, I assure you. It's similar to when people presume that your life is one way based only on appearances. However, in reality, the reality is very different. This is the energy. Let's now discuss Shirley's daughter Susan. She has been speaking up more recently, and to be honest, it makes sense. Something stirs inside you when you reach a significant milestone, like 10 years, don't you think? It's as though memories suddenly rush your mind and you feel compelled to correct the record. Not for the planet alone, but for your own comfort. Susan isn't merely speaking up for the sake of a publicity stunt or something like. No, this is genuine. In one sentence, she is remembering, lamenting and rejoicing. The way she speaks about her mother, not as Shirley Temple the celebrity, but as the person who was constantly by her side, is also really heartwarming. For the peaceful times as well as the major ones. She claimed that when it came to traveling and going shopping together, they were literally joined at the hip. Can you see Shirley Temple, the character that everyone saw on film, simply pulling a grocery cart alongside her daughter like any other mother? However, Susan's point is just that. She has no intention of glamorizing anything. She's simply saying, "Hey, I miss my mom, who was my best friend." Furthermore, she is far more complex than most people realize. The fact that Charles Jr., her son, has also added his voice adds to the sentimentality of the situation. You can sense the pride and affection they both have for her. Something he said struck you squarely in the chest. He said it was a significant issue. The one time he was truly reminded of his mother was when another person approached and requested an autograph. Something, isn't it? Imagine having a renowned mom who merely cooked you pancakes and reminded you to finish your schoolwork while you were growing up. Isn't that intriguing? But rather lovely too? Susan and Charles Jr. are intent on dispelling the falsehoods and absurdities that people have held for years. Do you realize how much the public like boxing celebrities? They are either disengaged, divas, or too preoccupied with their jobs to give a damn about anything else. Shirley Temple, though? No, her children claim that she was the complete reverse of all of it. Being a U.S. ambassador or even a superstar, which is already such a boss move, wasn't her proudest job. However, being a mother who prepared meals, shared laughter with her children, and always prioritized family above red carpets. And they truly want the world to comprehend that portion. She was grounded, she was kind. In the best sense of the word, she was normal, and hearing that is sort of refreshing, isn't it? In a time when a lot of superstars appear to be untouchable and larger than life, the fact that Shirley Temple, of all people, remained grounded is very endearing. This person has the potential to be an untouchable icon for the rest of her life. However, she didn't. Real life was her choice. At the table, she selected entrees. A complete, meaningful existence was made up of little moments. Even Charles Jr.'s statement that she was amazing and typical resonated with me. What more could you want from someone who was raised in the public eye? Furthermore, it is evident that the 10-year threshold was not chosen at random. It seems as though they had been harboring these ideas for some time, and suddenly it was appropriate to express them. To respect her memory in the most sincere manner imaginable, not only to protect it. Telling history the way it was is more important than changing it. This is more than a simple homage. The lady behind the mythology is revealed in a touching and intensely intimate way. Furthermore, how often do we get to hear a story like this about a celebrity's legacy? The individuals who sat next to them at the breakfast table, went on vacation with them, and sobbed in their arms did so, not the tabloids or the fans. It's true, it's not common. 10 years later, Shirley Temple's children are discovering the truth about her and revealing who she really was. To be honest, it only deepens your love for her. Did you ever think that the world's top kid star's ultimate goal was to become a mother? You believed Shirley Temple to be someone you know. The infinite appeal, the curls, the dimples, but what if her family had been concealing a reality for 10 years behind that charming smile? Why do her kids feel the need to speak up now? We all dismissed the rumors, but were they true, and why did they fear that others would discover out? Because of what they just verified, everything will change, so stay tuned until the very end. Which rumors were eventually verified by the family? In a sense, Shirley Temple was the love of America, the personification of innocence throughout particularly difficult periods, such as the Great Depression. Here's the problem though, certain aspects of her life have always been shrouded in mystery, don't you think? After hearing one thing, you're left wondering, what's the truth? Guess what though? At last her family made the decision to rectify the situation and make amends. And my lord, some of the things they disclosed are just crazy. It makes you sit back and reconsider everything you believed to be true about the girl who sang on the good ship Lollipop, not in a scandalous sense, but rather in a wow I had no idea kind of way. Let's begin with the famous smile of Shirley Temple. You're aware of it. Imagine her in black and white, dancing about in those gaudy little outfits, and grinning like she's had no worries in the world. That brilliant smile, it turns out, was a little Hollywood magic. Is it not unbelievable? In order to conceal her missing baby teeth during her early career at Fox Studios, Shirley wore special dental caps and plates, as the family has acknowledged. She did lose her teeth, just like any other child. However, the studios made sure her grin never faltered, because she was in the limelight all the time, and wanted to seem perfect. How did we not see that earlier? I wonder. And here's the thing. At Grayman's Theater in 19, during her major cement ceremony, she executed this subtle, brilliant maneuver, you know, the entire hands and feet in the cement thing that celebrities still do nowadays, rather of smiling broadly for the photographs, which would have shown that she was missing several teeth. She just removed her shoes and placed her bare feet into the cement. Who would even consider doing that? It was her way of saying, hey, let's concentrate on the feet instead of the teeth, okay? That's some serious kid star wit, to be honest. And that explains a lot of why, even at a time when most children are just wearing jack-o'-lantern grins, her smile always seemed so picture-perfect. But hold on, it becomes heavier. Let's discuss her health, which has been misinterpreted for many years. Shirley Temple had breast cancer, as most people are aware. It was a public section. Furthermore, in terms of how candidly she discussed it at the time, she was a complete pioneer. In the past, for example, it was considered taboo to even bring up breast cancer in the media. And here was Shirley discussing mastectomies on television, as if it were a common topic of conversation. That was enormous. The fact that breast cancer wasn't the true cause of her death, however, is something that most people were unaware of, and this is the part that truly got to me. She passed away from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, according to her death certificate, which was just recently made public. For those who do not know, it is a severe lung condition that is currently one of the leading causes of death in the United States. Yes, I am aware. Not nearly enough is spoken about it, but it's significant. This is when it becomes even more unexpected. Shirley Temple has been a smoker for her whole life. Isn't that somewhat surprising? Since she was a teenager, this woman, who essentially embodied healthy principles and clean lifestyle, has been silently working behind the scenes. Here's the problem though. She never wanted anyone to know about that aspect of her life, not because she was attempting to project an image of perfection, or because she was conceited. However, she genuinely didn't want to lead by example. Her relatives claimed as much. She went out of her way to ensure that she was never shown with a cigarette since she felt a great deal of obligation to her admirers, particularly the younger ones. You know, that's sort of heartbreaking. Imagine living your entire life with that type of shame, striving to live up to a standard that the world set for you while you were still losing baby teeth. The family brought up an old 1979 Pittsburgh Post-Gazette interview, in which it was implied that she was dealing with far more than most people knew. Now that we're looking back, everything begins to make sense. We always viewed her as this unwavering representation of the happiness of childhood. But below that, there was a lady who was dealing with a lot of strain, genuine secrets, and real challenges. Isn't it amazing that someone can be so well known and so loved by everyone, while still managing to conceal such intimate details for decades? To be honest, it begs the question of how many other items celebrities secretly carry around, because they believe the public would not comprehend. It feels almost like a blessing to Shirley that her family is now revealing these facts. She is still endearing despite it. She becomes more relatable and human as a result, because in the end, she was just a young woman who matured far too quickly, spent her childhood making people happy, and subtly fought her own problems in the background. And don't you think it's sort of lovely that she's continuing teaching us things after she passes away? Whether it's the stigma associated with smoking and health, the pressure to be flawless, or the silent courage required to shield people from your own imperfections. There are a lot of levels in Shirley Temple's narrative, and it feels like we can enjoy her in a completely different manner now that we know a bit more about the real girl, not just the smiling tap-dancing version on television. She was there during the spring invasion of Prague. Shirley Temple traveled in Czechoslovakia in 1968 as a representative of the International Federation of Multiple Sclerosis Societies. At that time, she was already an accomplished diplomat, and not simply a Hollywood star. She was actively engaged in activism and humanitarian action. The Soviet Union chose to launch a full-scale invasion force with tanks on the same day that she was supposed to meet with Alexander Dubček, the leader of the Czechoslovakian party at the time. For example, what are the chances? After dancing across sound sets in glittering tap shoes, Shirley Temple found herself enmeshed in one of the most horrifying political crises of the Cold War. You don't anticipate this type of story surprise, do you? Furthermore, this was more than a small annoyance. Uncertain of what would happen next, she was confined to her hotel. There was tension in the air. Panic and uncertainty are practically palpable in the atmosphere. She then fled to the hotel rooftop in one of the most eerie moments of her life, most likely only to gain a feel of what was happening or even to seek refuge. She saw something up there that will stick with her for the rest of her life. Soviet forces shot and killed a lady in front of her eyes when she was totally unarmed. How shocking would it be to see anything like that up close? The scene was not from a film shoot. This was actual life, and it turned into a memory that plagued Shirley for the remainder of her life. How could it not, after all? This is when her already amazing narrative takes on a new dimension. After all of that, she recovered from the horrific event and went on to serve her nation and other humanitarian causes with courage and dignity. When President Ronald Reagan was elected president in 1980, there was even speculation that she may join his cabinet. It's hard to think that the girl who first appeared on screen dancing with toy animals was once considered for a cabinet-level job in the US government. It's the type of change that most people can't possibly imagine. She would have been fantastic in that role as well, to be honest. Nevertheless, she decided to continue establishing her legacy via diplomacy rather than entering that specific limelight. She demonstrated once more that she was much more than simply a kid celebrity by focusing on the ambassadorial job she was already doing. She was a strong, intelligent, and incredibly graceful woman. 10 years after her death, Shirley Temple's life remains an amazing source of inspiration for countless others, which only serves to heighten the poignancy of her narrative. Give it some thought. How many kid celebrities were able to effectively change their identities? Twice, really. Initially becoming a world-renowned diplomat, he later became a well-respected public person who was regarded seriously in the political and international affairs fields. It's not common. Not only is that uncommon, it's practically unheard of. And even today, Many years after her passing, people continue to use her life story as evidence that you can grow, evolve, and overcome unimaginable adversity while still finding purpose in life. Her impact extends beyond vintage Hollywood antiques and black and white movies. It continues to influence how individuals approach leadership, service, and even self-reinvention. It manifests itself in the way we discuss courage, not the loud sort, but the quiet one that emerges when no one is looking. And to be honest, we need more motivation like that. Not just celebrity and glitz, but the type of quiet courage that confronts actual danger while continuing to choose action and hope. Sweetheart Shirley Temple was much more than just a tap dancer. She was a woman who persevered through trauma, tanks, and the relentless demands of celebrity and emerged victorious in the struggle for change. And doesn't that simply renew your admiration for her? On television, Shirley Temple was beloved by everybody, but what if the true tale was kept secret for 10 long years? The reality is that her children have now spoken up, and nobody anticipated this. What did they have to defend? What was it Shirley didn't want anyone to know? And why is it so important now? The solutions are not simple, but they are available if you persevere through to the very end. How the tale of Shirley Temple still motivates people. When you consider that 10 years have passed since Shirley Temple passed away, it's kind of amazing that she still seems to be here with us. In the way she lived, not simply in the black and white classics we watched with our grandparents as children, or the curly-haired doll we may or might not have pleaded for one Christmas. Shirley was more than simply a kid celebrity, to be honest. She was powerful. And yeah, that isn't only a cheesy homage. In many respects, this lady truly changed the world. And one of her strongest, most memorable actions ever, not even when she was an actress. It occurred when she did something that most people, especially famous people, wouldn't have dared to do at the time. She discussed breast cancer. Do you think that's possible? Let's travel back a little to 1972, when the word cancer was enough to silence anyone. You didn't discuss these topics in public back then. It was either not acknowledged at all, or discussed in whispers in back rooms. And now here is Shirley, the beloved childhood idol, standing in front of the world, and announcing that she did indeed have breast cancer. I underwent a mastectomy, and I'm still standing here. I mean, could we just take a moment to process that? Who after all does that? Who has the courage to expose something so raw and intimate in such a way? The world wasn't even prepared to hear it, to be sure. Shirley Temple did. Not for fame either. Not out of compassion. However, she was aware that perhaps, just possibly, another lady might not be as afraid if she could discuss it. She might attend the screening. Perhaps she would pose that uncomfortable question to her physician. She might be able to save her own life if she caught something early. And you know what? That's precisely what took place. Because Shirley Temple spoke up and spoke the truth, hundreds and thousands of women were motivated to take charge of their health. She didn't mince words. It was not glamorized by her. She didn't hide behind sophisticated medical language or publicists. She was straightforward in her statement. Let's be honest. It is not just admirable when someone demonstrates such bravery and honesty. That is revolutionary. Now consider this. How many famous people nowadays talk candidly about their health issues? A ton, huh? But it was practically unheard of in Shirley's day. She started that process. She made it acceptable by allowing people to speak. Isn't it amazing? Consider the ripple effect, for example. Her voice reverberated throughout succeeding decades, encouraging other prominent personalities, musicians, actors, and even members of the royal family to talk candidly about anything from mental health to illness. All due to Shirley Temple's decision to speak up while others were expected to remain silent. What could be more lovely? She didn't focus on herself. She had no intention of creating a tale of a return, or attract media notice. She really stated something like, "I'm only talking about this because I want to help someone else. That's all. Just heart, just empathy, just unadulterated humanity, no drama, no frills." Let's not overlook this aspect of Shirley's legacy, even if everyone remembers the tap dancing, the dimples, and the good ship lollipop. In all honesty, it may have been her most significant action. She transformed suffering into meaning. She transformed her dread into power. And she accomplished it with the same honesty and elegance that initially won her the world over. Even after a decade, Shirley Temple continues to inspire us with her courage lessons, continuing to demonstrate to us that even the most trying times in life may be used to brighten someone else's day. And don't we all occasionally need a reminder of that? That our tales can save someone else's life, no matter how traumatic they may be. Shirley was aware of it, and she expressed hers out of concern, rather than to get praise. She went from being a kid celebrity to a reputable diplomat. Some kid stars, just kind of fade away as they get older. For example, they experience a brief moment of fame while they are young, and then they disappear, perhaps participating in reality programs or simply attempting to remain current. Shirley Temple, however, was not one of those. No, she didn't simply disappear when her cute dimples and curls ceased to be the hottest thing in Hollywood. Rather, she accomplished something that continues to leave people speechless. She performed one of the most elegant and simply amazing comebacks you'll ever see. Really, who becomes a full-fledged ambassador after being a kid superstar? Shirley did. Not just any diplomat, however. We are discussing the genuine thing. Diplomacy in the sense of boots on the ground, making a difference. Shirley Temple Black won over America's hearts as a little child on the big screen. She went on to say that Black did not just retire to a life of luxury after marrying Charles Alden Black. She started working, oh dear, I'm talking about real work. She was named the United States Ambassador to Ghana in 1974. Ghana. Consider the transition from film sets and costumes to diplomatic talks and West African foreign policy. That's a whole change in lifestyle, not simply a change in employment. She also did more than just play the part. She jumped straight into the job's complexity, handling delicate diplomatic situations with a level of poise and intellect that, to be honest, many didn't anticipate from a former child star. But Shirley is always surprising, as you know. Then, right when you think she might slow down, she suddenly accelerates. She becomes the United States' first female chief of protocol. But hold on, it gets much more motivational. In the late 80s, and you know what? Shirley returned to her role as the U.S. ambassador to Czechoslovakia. This occurred when Czechoslovakia was leaving communism during the Velvet Revolution, one of the most turbulent political periods in Eastern Europe's recent history. She was therefore at the center of it all, influencing U.S. relations at a pivotal moment in history. She demonstrated that women could take charge, be respected, and influence history without ever sacrificing their individuality. She served as evidence that being famous need